All right. Welcome, Christina.
Well, hey, how you doing?
Good. It's good to see you again. And for those who are listening, Christina is one of the bookkeepers working with Financial Solutions, probably the one who handles most of my clients, and I trust her with everything. And so do my clients. And I'm so happy to have her on the show and introduce her to you. So Christina, tell us a little bit about you. You know, you do bookkeeping, but who is Christina? How did you end up doing all this?
I got really lucky. At a young age, my dad recognized I had an affinity for numbers. And where I grew up, our schools had programs, different high schools. You could go into nursing or you can go into business. I went to a business high school. So I got to take 3 years of accounting while I was still in high school. So I got to figure out I loved it before paying for college for it. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
statewide regents exam. And um, it was enjoyable. I loved the puzzle part of it, but I was also at that age where you were learning computer programming too in junior high and high school. So,
Wow.
so even though I got to learn all the manual aspects of accounting in high school, when the transition started getting made to automated systems, I'm going to date myself here, such as One Right Plus and Lotus 123, which predates Excel. Um, it was really easy for me to make those transitions for the clients, going from their manual books to automated books, because I had a nice understanding about how computer programming worked and where the glitches were and what was happening.
Yeah, so you're saying that this is before QuickBooks, this is before any of the software, this is before any of it, that you were doing this on like paper and pencil?
Green ledger sheets, yes, ma'am.
Yes, that's what I learned on in high school as well. So I earned my chops same, just in high school. And then luckily we could do our homework in college online. So that was good.
Yes.
Cool. So you started, tell us about how you started your bookkeeping business then. What made you want to serve business owners in that way?
It arose out of a necessity for autonomy, more or less. I was able to come in, see what they needed, get them sorted out and set up, write their standard operating procedure, and then move on to the next client that needed me. I didn't need to be 9 to 5 for one particular company. I had done that up through my mid 20s. And then after my son was born, I had a lot of people from my former employer that went on their own and were like, we don't know what we're doing with these books. Can you come in? And it just built from there.
Wow. So in a way, I mean, you built your bookkeeping business out of the autonomy that I think all of us want as we're starting online businesses and trying to be more fluid, more free with our time and be able to spend it the way we want to. So I'm so glad that you were able to do that so early in your career and discover that you wanted that.
Yeah, I got lucky. The job that I had left, I had made my way up to accounting supervisor. So I had my hands in all aspects of the books as it was going in, and got to change their structure as I went along. And you learn something different about how other people do things as opposed to how you would do them yourself. You learn to be patient with how people learn processes, how they can kind of pull back sometimes when things change. You learn to exude an amount of trust me attitude. I've got you. We'll get this done. You'll
Yeah,
understand it. I'll make it painless for you.
I love that. That's why I love working with you too, because it's just like she's got it handled. Um, cool. So how many years of bookkeeping experience do you have for everyone listening, just so you can establish it? I'm not aging you, I'm just establishing your credential, okay?
I come from good genes, so I'm proud to say I turned 52 this year.
Wow.
So I started learning it at 16, and I worked right out of high school. I did accounting internship through Oppenheim, Apple, and Dixon. Just sort of discovered I did not want to be a CPA, sitting in their tax law library, and just continued with the technology. I worked with QuickBooks R&D when they were first getting it set up. It was like a every other week phone call. But so that would put it at 36 years.
Wow, 36 years. So tell the folks who are listening, why do you need a qualified bookkeeper and a tax preparer, and how they work together? So why do you need to set yourself up with these types of professionals?
Well, one thing that I noticed over the years is that I have a little saying, don't be so busy in business that you're not looking at your business. The best way for you to actually look at your business is not to sit there and try to disseminate all this information, but look at the end product with somebody who understands what the tax ramifications are going to be. And that's your accountant, your tax preparer. Your tax preparer and your accountant can only go so far as the accuracy of your books. Your bookkeeper, when she has a decent sense of the program, all the applications that make the job easier for you, and understands how your business works for you and what you're looking to see, can cut your time. What you could do in 2 hours, she could do in one. Let's put it that way. You need to focus and spend your time growing your business and making your money, and allow someone else to make sure that the money is accounted for properly.
Yeah, and there's this stigma, I think, for new business owners who think they can't afford someone to help them with this, that they think that this is a bigger investment. And I mean, you don't have to say what your rates are, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's unrealistic to hire someone, even if you only have a few transactions a month, to start having them get to know your business, right?
Outsourcing is probably the best way. If you're worried about the costs of bookkeeping, hiring a bookkeeper is going to be exponentially more expensive than outsourcing to professional services. The mistakes that could be made in tax compliance or sales tax, you could get hit with $1,000 penalty in one shot because you messed up your sales tax. Well, you might be able to hire a bookkeeper for half that to look at your stuff on a regular basis. I mean, it all depends on how much flow you have, but there's definitely an intrinsic value to having somebody there to make sure that you're not penalized and that you're in compliance.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, a lot of business owners right now are starting out online, let's say, or starting a brand new business, and they're thinking, okay, I'm not quite ready to hire a bookkeeper yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do it on my own. How hard can it be? Don't I just have to log into QuickBooks and make sure that bank feed gets categorized? Is there really much more to it than that? And I hear that all the time, that they think it's super simple, because it kind of is in terms of the concept of tracking everything. But I think there's a misconception that when you're DIYing, that it's just living in that bank feed in QuickBooks and it's all automated for you. Can you kind of go into why you need more than just that?
Well, not only do you need more than just that, but if you don't set it up properly, I've gone into clients' books where I've had to delete duplications because they downloaded more information and didn't realize they downloaded the information and went back in and downloaded again. That could be a nightmare. The download bank feed is a tool. It's not a cure-all. If you don't pay attention to what you're downloading, or you set up rules and have QuickBooks just do it for you, you're running into the chance that there'll be skips and dates where the bank didn't upgrade or upload. Not all banks upload every day. You have to manually upload. But you're also missing an opportunity to take a look at them for what they are. I personally go into the downloads, I open up, I read the bottom transaction, making sure that what the QuickBooks is trying to allocate it to is appropriate, because QuickBooks sometimes it's like an AI, it's artificial intelligence, and it learns. So it's going to assume because you bought this from this vendor before and categorized it office supplies, but now you're leasing an office equipment, it's not going to recognize that. And you might not notice that the relationship with that vendor changed and QuickBooks didn't change with it.
Right, right. And there's more to it. There's tracking the vendors, tracking your customers, tracking what you're spending, and knowing how to read the set of financial statements and what it's telling you about the story of your business. That's what I always say is you're putting together all the chapters to tell the story, but if you don't know how to read the whole story in its entirety, it's only so useful to you.
Correct.
And you have to make sure that everything's written properly.
Don't miss the commas. Don't miss the commas. Don't miss the periods.
Right. It changes the whole meaning and the rhythm in which you're reading it. So that's a really good example. And another thing is reconciling and doing other things besides just categorizing transactions is actually super important. And people overlook that all the time. And I think that one of the best tips I have for you as a business owner would be to, even if it's not hiring a bookkeeper every single month. Bookkeepers offer training, right? And other tools that will help empower you. What are some of the options besides, let's say they only have a few transactions a month, but they just want to understand the concepts. What are their options if they really do want to DIY when they first get started?
You should definitely consult with your accountant. Make sure that your general ledger, the files that you're actually I consider the general ledger or your chart of accounts like the files in your file cabinet. If they're not labeled properly, when it's time to actually dive deep and look at something that's very important, like a tax deduction, it's going to be more difficult to find. So make sure that you're starting out with the right set of accounts. Make sure that you are not muddying things with too many sub-accounts. What's important to you to look at as far as your sales go? Do you need to see every t-shirt sold versus every bracelet, or is it all just sales? Are you looking at how much your merchants are charging you for your credit card fees? Is that important to you, or are you going to lump it in with your bank fees? You have to think about what is the picture that you're trying to paint for yourself as far as your business is concerned, and how many colors you're going to be using before you start trying to DIY. Talk to the experts, get the opinions, get a clear understanding of where you're going with this before you begin.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why in my onboarding calls with clients, right, what we go through is we go through a chart of account design.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to see? What do you need to, what do you need to actually look at? What level of detail do you need as a business owner? And I think that's so important. And I think that even accountants should be doing that more often as a team with the client to understand how can we make this as easy to understand for you as possible. And that's one approach I think you and I take is how can I make this digestible to the client? Not just doing it the right way and telling them it's handled, but making it so that they can read this and understand it. I think that's just a layer that gets overlooked way too often.
I think that the automated program, and I'll leave the name out of it, we know which one I'm using, kind of did a disservice to most business owners when they used this boilerplate set of chart of accounts. When it used to be in a box before it was even online, it was just this huge chart of accounts that nobody knew why. Okay, that's an income, that's an equity, that's a fixed asset. That meant nothing to the business owner. That meant nothing. Talking to the professional, do I need this? Can I have more of these? How do I make this mine? It's your business. The chart of accounts are not something necessarily just spoon-fed to you. Make them what you want them to be, but you also have to understand their form and function.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like building a house with the same exact foundation and layout. And it says, well, what if they don't want that layout? What if I don't want the bedroom over here? It's like, no, that's what you need because that's what we said, because they're all cookie cutter homes, right? And I totally agree with you on that front. For the business owner who's listening, when we say a chart of accounts, again, like Christina said, I use the exact same analogy actually and say file cabinet. It's like file folders, or I say books on your shelf, right? I need to find an electronic equivalent of that for my millennials and Gen Z. Like books are things that we used to read in the 90s.
Can't even say flash
Christina,
drives anymore.
I know, flash drive files. That's a good one. Folders online. And Christina's got a background that's a bookshelf right now, which is great. So the chart of accounts is basically a listing of the different envelopes, buckets, folders, whatever you want to call them, that you put those transactions into categories. So maybe it's, office expense, software expense, maybe it's coaching income, group coaching income. And how do you want to categorize each of those things so that you understand what exactly happened? What was the actual footprint this left behind? Was this a certain type of income? Was this a discount? Was this a refund? Was this a certain type of expense? So that anyone looking at your financials with a reasonable, sound mind could look at it and say, I understand what happened here. They spent money on this, and then they earned money from this. And it's really helping to illustrate the story. And as you put it, paint with all those different colors. And I think that, again, putting intention behind that and not just using the cookie cutter templates is huge, because I actually think that's, and maybe you agree with me if you're listening, huge source of confusion for most folks is, what do I do with all this? This is overwhelming. And I think that having somebody on your team that understands bookkeeping is crucial to know how to decipher that and how to make it your own.
Gone are the days, in my opinion, where people actually open the manual that comes with the disc that used to come in the box. And QuickBooks had done a wonderful job of giving you a manual that was 300 pages thick and would take you weeks to get through it, and you still might be scratching your head when you were done. I know I'm guilty of buying a car and not looking at the manual. If it takes you hours and hours and hours to disseminate information, but you can get on the phone with your financial service provider, we'll call ourselves, within 15, 20 minutes, you have a clear understanding, you could go back to doing business. You could go back to making money. And to talk about what you were saying about the buckets, when you understand your books, you're not just looking at them at the end of the year with your tax preparer. You're able to look at them from month to month and start to see trends, quarters. But if they're all lumped into the same bucket, you don't know why this one did poorly this month and that one did better, or why your fuel costs were so much higher. Well, because you accidentally put vehicle repairs in there with your fuel costs because you never separated out fuel from vehicle repair.
Yeah, exactly. And this goes for those of you who are operating online. Let's say you're an online coach, right? You've got a group program, a one-on-one offer, and an online course. And instead of calling all of that sales, what we're saying is you can actually group those out as different items so you can see what's trending, what's going well, what has a better margin, where should you be focusing your time and energy so that you're actually dumping money into ads that support the higher margin service or the item that makes you the most money. And how can you strategize that? That's actually where now Christina and I deliver that connected, right? Is we make sure the books are up to date and accurate. They reflect what you want as a business owner. And then we can turn that data into decisions for you, which is the objective at the end of the day, so that you can actually be empowered as a business owner. And let's go through one more question for you, Christina. How can an entrepreneur, if let's say they hire a bookkeeper, they say, all right, I'm ready to go. I've hired someone that's going to help me with my books. I'm committed to getting this done. What can I do as a business owner to make their job easy, or to make sure that it's operating as efficiently as possible and I'm not spending a ton of money because they're spending a ton of time?
Yeah, be clear about how your books are set up, your accounts are set up. Well, you can't emphasize that enough. Do not muddy the process with too many sub-accounts that you're never going to look at. And don't use a lot of different accounts. If you have multiple bank accounts or multiple credit cards, that's more time spent reconciling. That's more time spent figuring out, just because your account said paid to Chase, well, which Chase credit card did you pay it to? It's more archaeology. I do a lot of archaeology when I onboard some new clients because I have to get into the past and what they've done. And I think one of the hardest things to get past, which is a new trend, is the Square and the Venmo.
Oh yeah, that's a whole episode.
Unless you are able to give us a little tagline or just put car or something in that Venmo when it comes through, it's all guesswork. And you know what happens to guesswork? It goes back to you. And then we have to ask you, because these are transactions in question. So now we're waiting on your response, and that's delaying your ability to have a session where you can do your analysis.
Yep, totally agree. And it's not a big deal. It's not a huge problem to have that cycle. But I think that when we see a lot of those come in, it does hold us back a little bit from being able to give the business owner what they need. And I think that's a huge point. And no, with Venmo, it's not enough to put the emojis in there, right? We don't want to operate off of that. And we definitely want to be ready in the case of an audit that you have documentation that you can support what exactly you're paying for. So there's an entire episode already out there on why I don't like Venmo for business. So
yeah. And on your point about, your tax return,
mm-hmm.
we talked about, it's a chapter in the book. In order for us to serve the client properly, we have to be able to relate that story cleanly, concisely, because the last thing we want them to do is question what was on the return.
Exactly. So really what I want to get across to you as a listener is find a united front, find a bookkeeper and a tax preparer that work well together and that trust one another. Like I trust Christina, because I know if she's done the books, I'm like, she's good, they're good. And we know that there's going to be very little confusion. There's going to be very little back and forth and delays for you because they work in tandem. So even if it's not under one roof, like we have at Financial, it can be a bookkeeper and a tax preparer that happen to work well together. So I recommend if you have a bookkeeper, ask them, are there any tax preparers you work really well with, or vice versa? Because I guarantee you that relationship is going to go really far in terms of the quality of service that you're going to have. So just to reiterate, Christina, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking out the time away from reconciling all our clients' books to jump on and spend this time with me going through a little bit of your background and your tips. And for anyone listening, if you're interested in working with Christina and with us at Financial, all you have to do is go to financialsolutions.com and submit your information. The information's in the show notes. We would love to work with you, and we would love to answer any questions you have about what you learned in this show. So if you have any questions, reach out to me on Instagram at Shannon K. Weinstein. All right. Have a great day, and I'll see you next episode.